Camera live? Hey, everybody. Sorry we're a little bit late. I was teaching a class all day, and it just, the transition to setting up for this and everything took a little bit longer than it normally does. So, tonight we are going to, I'm going to show you how to pair the veneer on your drawer fronts to get a nice clean edge there. We'll talk about preparing the drawer fronts, like sanding them and everything. And then we'll move to the back. And we'll start by squaring up the corners, show you how to do that. We'll talk about cutting the veneer. I'll show you how to edge glue the veneer together, and then how to glue it down to the plywood that will become the back. And then next class on Monday, we will fit the back in and also apply finish to everything and talk about the pulls for the drawer front. For the drawers, all right? I know we haven't covered that yet. Those can sort of be done at any time. So we'll do them next week. All right? Again, if you have any questions during tonight's class, just type them into the chat, and I will answer them. Joe will read them out, and I'll answer them. If you have questions outside of the time that we're here together, just post them in the community on Thinkific, and I will answer them as fast as I can. I believe that there might be a few questions that came in today. I will try to get to them tonight after we're done. If not, I'll do it in the morning before I teach again in the morning. Otherwise, I think that's everything. Sorry about sending the link out for tonight's class so late. I meant to do it last night, but I don't know if you follow me on Instagram or not. You don't know. We had a big line of storms come through on Sunday. I lost power. It wasn't restored until yesterday, so it just kind of threw the whole week into chaos after that. And it just slipped my mind this morning to do it, and last night to do it. But we hopefully everyone saw it, and you're joining us if you want to. Otherwise, you're watching it as a recording, and it doesn't really matter. All right, so I'm going to head over to my bench, and we are going to talk about that Endgrain veneer front and how to trim it down and without tearing it apart. All right, so Joe, switch over there. I'm going to get my chart. Okay. So I don't know which are you switched over to the other camera now? Are you still on this camera? All right. One, as you know, I know I mentioned this a lot, but you really need to have a sharp chisel for this. All softwoods are in some way kind of brittle, and they're prone to breaking away rather than being cut cleanly. And that's especially true now when we're going to, on the top and bottom of the drawer, we're going to be cutting across the grain rather than with the grain. And you have to really worry about this stuff being torn out. This old growth Douglas fir that I have is especially bad when it comes to this. It just wants to crumble and fall apart. So I sharpened my chisel just like half hour ago or something. So it's freshly sharpened. It should work really well on this. And we'll jump right into that, okay? I just need to get this tape off. There we go. All right. If you want to switch over to this one. So if you can see, I was careful to not have the veneer overhang too much. The more it overhangs, the more problematic it is to get rid of it. We are going to start on the top and the bottom. And that way, if there is any tear out when we get to the end, it'll be tear out on something that's going to be cut away later, so it's not an issue. All right. I'm going to take the chisel, and using the drawer front as a sort of a reference, I'm going to start to slice in from the end. I'm not pushing out. I'm swinging the chisel in from the end so that the fibers are supported as they're being cut. And I'm going to continue to move that chisel in. And I can start to get more of the chisel onto that front, on the drawer front, and push it down. Now, if you ever have wondered, can Matt really sharpen his chisel? Yes, that is sharp. If you can get a curl like that from cross grain, you're doing some magic. All right. So I'm going to keep working that. See, it's almost, I want to leave a little bit left to come back and get. So what I'm going to do actually is turn this up. And I'm going to take most of this away by coming down with the grain. What it was doing, because it was taking such a thick shaving, you can see it started to tear out. Can you see that?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it's a little hot on there.
Okay, so that's why I stopped and turned it up, and just popping this off. This way it should pop off pretty easy because you are going with the grain. But it can be kind of hard to get it nice and level that way. All right, so coming back. Didn't want that to happen. The chisel is really, it's riding on top of that cherry drawer front. It's still not flush, so I'm going to come back and go again. This Douglas fir in particular is just so problematic. Well, you got to, to get that, you got to sacrifice a little bit, maybe. All right. This is pretty good in terms of being flush. I will actually sand all of this lightly when I'm done. All right. Now I'm going to just give a quick go on the bottom.
Back it up just a hair.
Any questions yet?
What's your highest stone you go to?
My highest stone is a 13,000 grit stone.
No stone.
I don't strop, no. What did you do on Wednesday night? I watched a guy on the internet pair drawer front. Was it exciting?
So exciting.
Have you ever seen someone sleep on a golf course? It was that exciting. Oh, look at that. Shit. It's right here is a little section where the veneer's not really down. So, oh, this is going to be a delicate operation here.
What is that, Matt?
This is CA glue. Try to blow it down into the crack. Give me that piece of paper towel there, you bozo. All right, just, yeah. Yep. I guess I could have waited to do this, but I'm a little nervous about.
Kirby says it's better than the current TV lineup.
Absolutely, it is Kirby. That's Kirby Puckett, by the way. I know he's dead. I shouldn't. He's coming to us from the grave, Kirby Puckett. He probably also voted in this past election.
We just lost 30 followers. 30 viewers.
That's really not holding, which is bumming me out, which means there probably none got down in there. Does anybody have any questions while I hold this and hopefully that it takes?
Jeannie's got some insight. It says CA glue cures with moisture, so if you blow it down, you might accelerate the curing. Be careful where your fingers are. Love, Jeannie.
Oh, it's stuck. No, it's not. I just think I didn't get any down in there. Well, what I am going to do is, well, I can't really move on and while it's.
You put a piece of blue tape on it.
I kind of thought about that, but yeah, I'm kind of worried about it messing up the veneer. But I think I will.
Are you going to show the sanding knife?
Yeah, we can do that. I probably really messed things up getting that. Because if it's soaked down into the end grain, on the drawer front. That's a problem. All right, so let's move to the ends of the sides of the drawer. And this way, I have found that the easiest thing to do is just you pop it off like that. And because you have such a long reference surface, the drawer side being that whole reference surface, and see, look what just happened. That's why this crap is so. Can you see that? Right there.
What happened? Chipped off?
Yeah, it chipped off the corner.
Chip off the old.
So, yeah. Son of a monkey. I don't know what to do about that, to be completely honest.
Did you just tear the blue tape? So
I did. That's the kind of night it's been. I tore the blue tape without cutting it. There's so little there, I don't think I could actually glue something unless I found the exact right piece that came off. And even then, it's so small.
Veneer says I'm beginning to think that our bad luck earlier wasn't all my fault.
Or maybe he just gave me bad mojo for the night. All right, well, I'll figure something out about that. So let me go ahead and do the other end. That CA glue is either going to take or not take. And it didn't take. So I'm really going to press down to make sure that the veneer is tight against my bench while I do this. Which sanding was that person asking about?
I think about the drawer front. Like when you, like what you're doing now, I guess. Who is Brad? Let me check.
Okay. So,
yeah, it was Chris. Chris E says you mentioned sanding afterward. What grits are you going to try to work through?
Okay. So I would start with 220 and then work my way up to like 600 at least. Because I'm not going to put shellac on this. It'll discolor the two different grain lines. And so you won't be able to see that distinction between them as well. So what I usually do is just wax them. And I will get some sandpaper now and show you how I do that. I'm not going to go through the whole process of doing it because, we'll be here forever and it's just me sanding. Yeah, I think that's 220. But after you trim them down, the drawers should, go in there without any real trouble. Oops.
Kirby says time for an epoxy lake in that corner.
An epoxy what?
Lake.
An epoxy lake.
I'm not sure it looks pretty.
So they fit in there. So that's what it looks like now. And it hasn't been sanded yet. The sanding will really highlight the grain pattern. So let me show you that. And I can do that going in that direction, so. Pardon, my bench is falling apart. Man, this stuff is so parsnippity. Parsnippity. I need this. Need my little hoo-ha. Copyright Al Pacino. So I'm going to put that down. Let me get my sanding block. Let me get my sanding block. Use this one. What are you doing? Okay. All right, I'm back. I have some 220 grit sandpaper. I have a sanding block. I would not have it be too soft. So just you could just put it on a piece of sand, plywood would work great too. You want to do the bulk of your work with this coarse grit. You don't want to move up past it until you have got everything level and smooth. And if you have to, you know, I'm trying 220, but I might go back down to 150. Maybe even break these corners, actually.
Sue wants to know, do you have to worry much about the grain chipping out during the sanding process?
It depends upon the particular veneers you're using. I've had some where it's not an issue at all. Usually sanding's not a problem. Definitely a hand plane here could be a problem, but sanding shouldn't be a problem. But I did chamfer the ends here and around the top and the bottom a little bit as well, just to hopefully ward off any tear out. But the sanding should not create it. You have to think about the sanding block as working like the sole of a plane. So it needs to be, you don't want to use your hand because that will just follow the contours that are already there. You want something that's long-ish and will hit the high spots initially and then take the high spots down the way a hand plane does until you get rid of the hills and you're just working down at the valley level then. So it's getting close. I still have like a low spot in through here. And also I can feel it's rough right at that center seam. So it's just going to take, it takes time and Endgrain does not sand super fast. Yeah, it's still. This is when you should get out the belt sander. Just a joke. Do not get out your belt sander. I've done far too much hand sanding in my life because I immediately start to feel it. Yeah, I mean, we would be here all night, so I'm not going to do this. Can they see it if you like how close? Can you see the variation in the color here?
Yeah, what's it? Yeah.
So this area here is where it's actually sanding. And you can see how it's clarifying the grain and everything. This here is where it's not sanding. So you can kind of watch these color variations to see how close you're getting to being flat. So it's not going too slowly, but it probably got another 5 minutes or so at 220. But once you get it flat and everything is sanded to 220, the rest of it will go really fast. It won't take but a couple of minutes at 320, a couple of minutes at 400, a little bit at 6, and then you could go as high as 800. So you can see how, that now there's far less of this lighter, hazy section. It's all sort of focused here concentrated here in the middle. And the really clear sections is getting larger and larger. What time is it? 7:35? Okay. We'll give this a few more minutes.
Brad wants to know, can you use low angle block plane to speed it up from all sides?
No. You can, but you'll fuck it up. I promise you, you will. It would have to be, do I think that I could sharpen one of my low angle block planes well enough? I do, but the problem is, I don't know. I've tried it before, and it just never seems to work out the way I want it to. There's like if you were planing the Endgrain of a board, that Endgrain, there's so much meat there because the board's really long, right? This is only a 1/16 of an inch thick, And the only thing holding those fibers down is glue. And it's not quite strong enough. Now, if you could, in theory, get your a plane blade truly, genuinely sharp and take light enough of a shaving that you could slowly flatten this with a block plane. But I would highly recommend that you do it with sandpaper the first time, because I would hate for you to get this far and then have it get torn up and not be able to use it, because there really is no repair.
What about a scraper?
Did you hear that?
I did hear it.
It's genius.
So what I recommend, of all the available tools to you, is sandpaper. Not a scraper, not a hand plane. And like I said, I'm recommending this to you because it's the safest thing. All right. I don't want you to try a block plane and destroy it. You know, that would not make me happy for you. You know, I'd feel bad for you, and I'm sure you would feel bad too. So sanding is safe, and it's really not that long. All right. But it's definitely long enough that we're not going to finish it here on this tonight in the 2 hours, because there's other stuff to do. All right. So I'm going to call that for tonight. It's pretty close to being done with the 220. And like I said, after the 220, once it's flat, it goes pretty quickly, just like it would with a hand plane. If you're hand planing something or you're sanding something normally, once you get it flat, it all goes really fast. So I'm going to put this to the side, and we're going to turn to the back and start talking about how to make the back and all of that. All right. Any more questions about the veneer? Unless it's a question about something you can use besides sandpaper. I highly recommend just using sandpaper. Nope. Nothing. All right. We're going to go back here. Yeah. Set these out of the way. Oh, you're killing me, Smalls, with that chip out, man.
Some more what?
Some more what? Give me s'mores.
Would you ever sand with the grain? Oh, let me say that before I get yelled at.
Would you sand with the grain? Says Scott McRae.
Did you read the other questions before? Well, with Endgrain, there is no with the grain, really. It's all with the grain, or it's all against the grain, because you're sanding across the open end of the straws. So there isn't any with or against the grain. I guess it sort of looks like there is, because they're creating that cathedral, but there's really not a with or against the grain. However, I would pick one direction and only sand in that direction. Because if you start sanding in opposite directions, you'll start creating scratch patterns that are not, they're not overlapping, and that could be more problematic to try to get that out. So I would pick a direction and work in that direction. Okay?
I think I missed one from Triple F. I think you addressed this, but it said, why not go down to, say, 180?
You could, if it was really bad, you could go down to 180. Like I said, I would probably actually jump down to 150 and see how that went. That's the next lowest grit I have, I believe, is 150, not 180. So I would go 150. Actually, I would go to, well, I know I have like 5-inch sanding disc in 150 and 180. So I probably would jump down to 150, then go 180, then 220, then 320, then 400, then 600, and maybe even 800. But I would not do it wet for those grits. I would just clean the sandpaper often. Okay. Let's talk about the back. Which camera are we looking at?
Let's talk about that. That one's fine. This one.
This one. All right. So after we routed and glued up, the back corner looks like this. But you want it to look like this. All right. So we're going to switch cameras, and I'll show you how to do that safely. So I'm going to work on this corner here.
Shift it towards the drill press just a little bit.
Like that.
Turn back towards the slice. Right there. There we go. Right there.
All right.
Copy that.
So a couple of things you have to be concerned about here. One, you don't want to break out this little bit of pin that's left, okay? Because we need to remove the material that's roughly all of that material. So this actually becomes pretty weak, and it is delicate until we get the back in, and then the back supports it, and it's fine. And we also don't want to split anything off because there's not much material here. So if we were to put a lot of force coming down in parallel to the grain, we risk breaking that off. So as with any type of paring activity, we're going to take a little bit off at a time, and we want to use a sharp chisel. So I'm going to start all the way out, sort of where the router first begins to rise up off of the edge of the side of the rabbet. And I'm just going to put a few tightly spaced pushes in there, and that material should come out pretty easy. You can turn the chisel, lay it down, and come across it like that. I know that they probably can't see that, can they?
Not really. Just below the lip of the.
Okay. So how about that? Can you see? So what I was bringing the chisel across like that, and that has begun to flatten out where the radius of the rabbiting bit. And now I can begin to just pare away a little bit at a time off this end grain. And I'm just going to slowly work my way back. I'm taking maybe a 1/64 of an inch at a time. You'll be successful at this if your chisel is sharp and you are patient. I don't know if I've said it to y'all, but I think the most valuable skill that I possess in the shop is patience. That and my devastating good looks. All right. Whoops, too much. You absolutely should not be hitting your chisel with a hammer. You should be able to just push it through. So I've gotten back to the point where that rounded part is all gone. And now I have to be a little more careful because I want to make sure that like these fibers are severed so I'm not sort of crushing anything away. And what I'm going to do is just come in a little bit from that edge that I'm going to go to and press down. And if I come up gently here, very gently, and press in, I sever that top layer. And now I'm going to all right, so I got that top little bit out of the way, and I can continue to just take a little bit at a time off that end grain. And I am staying a little bit in from this top edge, and I'll come back later, and after I'm done getting rid of all this end grain and pare it flush. Man, why is that happening? That's killing me. It's not my night tonight. So what's happening is that this, I don't know if it's possible to see that, but it's just pulling out like in it, and that's not good. That's going to kind of be visible because this is the top. And, well, you just got to live with it now. We'll see how bad it looks eventually when I get the back in there. I mean, I could glue something in and try to patch it a little bit, but that might end up looking worse. I'm not pushing my chisel down that far, so it's just, but it keeps breaking out to there. And I just don't want it to do that. So what I've done is switched over to this technique so that I'm not making that problem worse. All right, read them away, Joe. We got questions.
Jeannie says, won't it be covered by the back? Can't really see what the problem is. But I think there'll be a curved kind of space between the back and where that meets up.
That's correct. Yeah. So because the back will only go in to meet the bottom of the rabbet everywhere. So this is a little section where it dips down beneath the back, this line, this surface here. So there's just this little bit of a dip in. And even with the back there, from the inside of the cabinet, there'll be a little gap there. And it most likely won't be visible because it's when it's hanging, it's at the top and it's at the back. It's in the shadow, and so it's probably not going to be visible.
Next question from Chris. Would there be a benefit to cutting notches on the backing board rather than trying to remove all the rabbit excess that you're removing now?
You mean like to round over the corners?
That's what I think.
Oh, like how would you exactly do that? Now, if you were going to do that, you would have to assemble the cabinet and then route the rabbet, because what that would do is create a radius like this. So it'd be a radius like that. And then you, in theory, could round the corners of the back to fit up into it. But I'm not sure. You would have to have a really small radius rabbeting bit to do that. And not have that radius, be like out here. So if you rabbet the back the way that I did, where you do it before the cabinet's together and it's laying flat on the router table, this is what you couldn't really radius the back. I mean, I guess I get what you're saying by doing a notch, but no, I wouldn't do that.
And then last one we have right now says, Brendan says, Matt keeps saying Endgrain. His video quality is bad, but where's the Endgrain in the rabbit?
Okay.
I think you're referring to.
No, yeah, I was. So, all right. So I'm taking material off the pin board. All right. So if you look at the pin board is running this direction. This is the end grain of the pin board. And what I'm doing is working back on the pin board from out here to here. So I'm cutting down like this and making it, taking away that material. So technically that material that I'm cutting is Endgrain. It's like I'm making the pin not so long, and the grain that's visible, the grain that I'm cutting through is this grain here, and that's Endgrain. All right. All right. All right. Man, all the other corners are perfect. And that one got all messed up. So now the bulk of the waste is gone, and I can come in and just make sure that this top edge is straight. And then nib off the last little bit of that pin board, the end grain of the pin board. Okay, that's all done now, eh? That's a real beauty, eh? Okay, so I've squared up that. Why don't we switch back to this camera? There's camera right over here. Potatoes. All right, so I've squared up the corner. All my corners are square, and we can move on to make the back. And unless you have questions about squaring up that corner, again, the things that are going to be the most valuable to you doing that are a sharp chisel and patience, and just taking a little bit at a time, and not trying to get it all out of there in one blow. If you do that, you're going to break something. All right? No questions. Okay. Let's we're going to take like a 2-minute break, and we're going to move the cameras around, and then we'll come back. So you go get some water or whatever's, and we'll come back in just about 2 minutes. Okay, everyone's back. At least I am. So we'll get started. The back is the veneers for the back. I'm making the same way. I'm using the rip and flip technique, just on a thinner scale. Now, I want the interior of the back, that veneer on the inside face that you see when the cabinet's hanging on the wall, I want that to be proportionate to the overall size and dimensions and the delicateness of the cabinet. So I'm not going to take, like, say, a 4.5-inch wide board and resaw the face grain and have two pieces glued together. What I want is really tight, straight grain. So this is from the same board that I used to make the rest of the cabinet. I found a section that had really nice, tight grain along the edge. Now, this was, I believe, 5/4 cherry, and I've jointed and planed it down to 1 inch thick. And what I am going to do, or what I did do, was take that board over to my bandsaw and started to rip out strips. These are 3/32 of an inch thick. So I ripped a strip. I took the board back to the jointer and jointed the edge again. Then I ripped another strip out, rejointed the edge of the board, ripped out another strip at the bandsaw, and repeated until I had 9 strips. All right, and I have my triangle is marked on was marked on the face of the board before I started to resaw it and rip out the pieces. So now I know what order they were in when they came out of the board. And also, because of the way I jointed then cut, the same face on all of them is jointed. And it's the opposite face on all of them that has the bandsaw marks. Okay? So now if I take these 9 strips and do what's called a slip match, I'll create a really nice veneer of tight, straight grain that will look appropriate as the back to a small cabinet like this, as opposed if you were to use cathedral grain, a big cathedral, or really widely spaced straight grain. That would all look a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you how to do the slip match. You can start from the bottom of the deck or the top of the deck, but I'm going to start from the bottom. So take that bottom one. I have the jointed face down. Take that bottom one, lay it down. Take the next one off, lay it down. Third one, fourth one, fifth one, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they all just come off to the side. And the jointed face on all of these is facing down, and the resawn or the bandsawn face is facing up. All right? And this is different. So a book match, you open up like a book. A slip match, you slide over and then put it down. And I just did that with all 9 pieces. Just slid the one on top off the one beneath it and laid them down out in order. And that is a beneficial over a book match in a couple of ways. One, now all of the grain on the two faces is running in the same direction, because on a board, and this is true either of the two edges and also of the two faces, if the grain on this face is running from my right to my left, then the grain on the other opposite face is running from my left to my right. So the grain runs in opposite directions on opposite faces, okay? If you think about a book match, the two faces that you open up, one of them is the bottom and the other one is the top. So the grain is running in opposite directions on them. All of a sudden you have this veneer that you really can't hand plane anymore. At least you can't hand plane right at the joint, because the grain's running in opposite directions on those two pieces. So it's problematic from the working standpoint that the grain is running in opposite directions. You can't really hand plane it very well. That fact that the grain is running in opposite directions has an effect on the aesthetics as well, because the light will reflect off the two pieces differently. They will have a different chatoyance. So one side of the veneer, if it's book matched, is a little bit darker than the other one when you look at it from one direction. When you go 180 degrees and stand at the other end, the other one is dark, and now the one that was dark is light. The one that was light is now dark. And that's just because the way that light reflects off grain. And when the grain, in a sense, intersects the light at a different angle, it has a different appearance. And if you were to like book match all these little strips, you would have a pinstriped back, and it looks terrible. But by slip matching, all the grain runs in the same direction on one face, and on the other face it all runs in the opposite but same direction. And what that creates is an even uniform chatoyance on that veneer you're making, and that looks nice. So that's why you want to do a slip match. It's easier to work with hand planes or whatever afterwards, and also you get a uniform, coherent chatoyance, and that looks nicer in the completed cabinet. All right. Any questions about a slip match? Did I beat that into the ground? Yes. Okay. What we're going to do now is we'll take a little bit of time to talk about how to glue this up and to make it a single piece of veneer. And then I'll show you how to glue that veneer down to the plywood. All right. For this back, I'm going to start with, I've already cut my plywood out, and for the back, it's a little bit oversized. It's about maybe 20 1/4 by 9 1/4. The back itself needs to be, or it is roughly 8 3/4 or 20 or 19 3/4 by 8 3/4, because it's roughly a 1/2 inch shorter and longer than the cabinet itself. And that's because the rabbet has that little lip around the outside of it, okay? So, but this is a tiny bit oversized right now, and that's what you want. My veneers right now are a little bit oversized as well. They're actually probably about 24 inches long, but I'll cut them short before I glue them down. And as far as the width goes, they're pretty much spot on, the same size as the plywood. All right. What I'm going to do is mark this with a triangle. And that makes it easier. That is a visual indicator when I start to lay it out to glue it up that I've got it in the right order. I'm going to stack them back up. Now, I will say, when I'm looking for a veneer, for say that's a show veneer, I actually don't want a bunch of identical pieces because that makes it look like it was cut up to make veneer. So what I've got here, and this just came about because I observed the edge grain, I looked for pitch pockets and things like that. I know that the pitch pocket is not going to be consistent as I work my way across. And so what I've ended up with is these sort of randomly located irregularities, or these are pitch pockets in this case. It could also be little knots or something like that. And when I put this all together, because these are sort of irregularly placed, it makes it give the appearance as if it's a single wide piece rather than a bunch of narrow pieces glued together. So you can use irregularities in the wood like that to break up the appearance that it's a bunch of small veneers, narrow veneers glued together. All right, let's hear the questions, Mr. Joe.
All right. Rob wants to know, if we were going to use a different wood for the back than we used for the cabinet, how would we select the wood color, etc.?
Yeah, you want a wood that complements the cherry, not contrast with it. So at the top of my head, here's a list of woods I would not use. You can all guess what's top of the list. Purple heart, yellow wood, canary wood, zebra wood, paduke, zircote. Isn't that a wood? Zircote. I don't know what wood I would choose as an alternate wood to this. I would choose, if you want something that looks a little bit different, choose figured cherry. And actually the cherry that I have is a little bit figured. So it's going to have this nice sort of luster and chatoyance to it that's going to give it a different appearance than the cherry sides and everything. So it's going to look different, but it's still going to complement it. Yeah, you could use Douglas fir, I guess. Say if your drawer fronts are Douglas fir Endgrain, use Douglas fir long grain as the back. But Douglas fir does darken, and it gets closer and closer in color to cherry. It's still distinguishable, but it gets darker and darker, and so the difference between them becomes less and less through the years.
Alder or birch?
Yeah. Someone asked about alder or birch. Sure. I don't really know how to answer this question because it's honestly something that I would not do. But that's my personal take, my personal preference is that I don't think it would look nice, so I wouldn't do it. It would have to be the kind of thing where I had a particular board that had a particular color, particular grain characteristics, and I would go, that board looks nice. I don't think I could say this species would look nice because I'm not sure that there's any species that would always look great with cherry in this particular use. Because you're talking about a fairly large field that when you look at that cabinet, you see the back of it. And you also have to think that, so if you put something in there that's like a really severe contrast, that's what's going to draw attention, is going to be the back. And what you really want to be, what is really the focal point of this cabinet, is the drawer fronts. So everything else should be there to frame and establish the drawer fronts as the focal point. And so that's why the drawer back, the back of the cabinet is cherry, and it's also a very quiet cherry. It's straight grain. The grain's not distracting. If anything, it has a little bit of figure and chatoyance, but not too much. And if you get perfectly quarter sawn cherry, it's gonna have a little bit of figure, a little bit of chatoyance to it that otherwise cherry doesn't have. So if you just get perfectly quarter sawn cherry and make your veneers, it's gonna have a little bit of shine to it. All right. I know that didn't answer your question, but it's sort of like asking me, like, "Hey, Matt, what type of bloodwood would you use as the back?" And it's like, "Well, no, I just wouldn't do that." So it's kind of hard for me to answer that question. It doesn't mean that it's wrong to do it. It does mean I have a fairly strong belief about it, and I'm not going to BS you and tell you I don't. All right, so I've laid down some wax paper on top of my table saw, and I'm moving the fence over. And I'm going to work against the fence here. I have found that this is a pretty simple and effective way to do this for something as narrow as this. Just going to start stacking them or laying them down in that slip match arrangement. Okay. All right. So the face and the two edges of these pieces of veneer came out of the planer. So they should be straight and clean. And so you should be able to get a nice tight joint if you just apply a little bit of pressure. Now, one thing is, so what you want to do, one thing you definitely want to do is account for snipe here. So if you need to have a piece that's 20 inches long with nice tight joints, any snipe you have needs to be outside of that 20 inches. So you could start off with a piece that is, say, 27 to 30 inches long, join it and plane it to the final thickness, and that thickness is what becomes the width of the veneer strips. Then cut off the snipe and get yourself down to that 20 inches with no snipe. All right, because it's important that these joints are tight and invisible. Okay? Next thing you need is some blue tape. This is the ShamWow Flex Seal of the shop. It does everything. And I'm going to take a piece of blue tape that's long enough to stretch across the width of this veneer panel. I'm going to stick it down to the piece closest to me. Now I'm going to press all of those pieces together against the rip fence on my table saw. And I'm going to stretch that blue tape and really stretch it. Pull on it and lay it down. And then make sure it adheres nice and tightly, okay? And it might even already start to curl. It should be curling up. You actually want it to, that means you've got them nice and tight. All right, time for the second piece. I'm going to come down to the opposite end and do the same thing. Make sure they're all flat down on this table. Put that tape down. Ooh, didn't quite make it all the way. I gotta I'm going to come to the middle. Push them together. I'm ready.
So Jeannie wants to know, so to get enough strips, how much wood should we have left to work with for ripping?
Well, I mean, that all depends on things like how thick are your veneers? How thick of a kerf does your bandsaw take out? How much material are you removing when you joint it in between cuts? I started off with a piece. What happened to that piece of cherry that I had? It just disappeared up and disappeared on me. Here it is. So I started off with a piece that was this wide, pretty much. Let's see. It was more like 3.5 inches maybe. And I was able to get 19 pieces of veneer out of it. And that gives me the veneer for the front and the veneer for the back face. So the front face and the back face of the back. And that's what I needed. So if you would want to have a piece, I would say that's roughly, to be on the safe side, 4 to 5 inches wide. And or, because you're not going to see them at the same time, you could have 2 pieces that are 2 inches wide, and you should be able to get 9, 3/32 inch thick veneers out of each one. All right. But I would say if you want to get them all out of the same board, start with something that's 5 inches wide. That's plenty wide enough. All right. Good question, Jeannie. Oh, man. I'm starting to feel a little bit like a marshmallow. I don't even know. All right. Let's get another one on here. I'm tired is I guess what I mean. This is a variation on a technique that I learned from Philip Morley, the furniture maker down in Texas. That he did an article for Fine Woodworking, and I edited and shot the photographs for. And Philip's version of it, he does this at his workbench, and the veneer goes against a fence on one side, and on the other side, there's a caul that stretches across all of it, and he uses Veritas bench blades. These little guys, they sit down in a dog hole, and the cam on it presses these little vice jaws up against the caul, and it pushes everything together. And that works extremely well, but I have found for small things like this, I just don't need to do it. And also, you don't have to go and buy these. But I do have that set up on my bench to be able to do it. All right. Now we're going to run tape parallel to the joints. You want a piece of tape over every joint. It just so happens to be that I have this 2-inch wide tape, and I can arrange it so that it covers up 2 joints at once. And that's what I'm going to do. When the veneer is wider, you might have to have a single piece of tape for every joint. But because this veneer is so narrow, I can actually lay this down and get it over 2 joints. I'm definitely starting to get a little loopy. Yeah. So you know that the original marshmallows were made from a part of a plant that grew in marshes, and it was called the mallow. So marshmallows originally came from a swamp plant. Now, of course, they're synthetic and they're made from the souls of seals and puppies. What's that?
I have to let my kids know.
Good. Let your kids know that. All right. So now this is all, it's, the tape that we first put down across the grain is what holds the joints tight together. And now this along the grain is going to let us turn it over and open up each joint and get a little glue down in there. So these joints, you want them to be tight and stay tight together. So if we look at it from this side, you can't see the joints at all, can you? So that's a nice tape job. That was a nice tape job there, young man. So I'm going to spread glue so we can sort of open this up now, get glue down in there, and then go back, lay it down, and run the tape across, and it'll then that'll be perfect. You can, from this side, which is the jointed face, you can see. Can they see the chatoyance?
When you held it up, yeah, I think
Like, can you see the? Can you see that? How it's shimmering? Yeah, that's all you really need for a little bit of contrast. It's beautiful. It's like when you have a suit on and you're with a blue shirt and you just wear a nice blue tie with a nice subtle pattern on it or something. Looks nice. Okay, glue bottle, but not that one, this one. You know what, actually? I'll be right back. Oh no. What happened to all my baby glue bot nipples? Yeah, but the little replaceable nipple is messed up. And I meant to get one before class started, and I know it is. Crap. Okay, well, I guess we're not going to use baby glue bot, but that's normally what I would use. Because it has a little pinhole in the side of the nipple. And so instead of coming out in a nice little tight bead I want, it comes out. Ooh, actually it's working. All right. Maybe it got glue in there and dried. Okay. So this is Baby Bot, the glue bottle. You can find this at Woodcraft and Rockler and places. They make a big one, but the little Baby Bot is the one that's perfect. The best thing that ever happened on the Shot Talk Live podcast was the Baby Glue Bot song that Ben and I made together. All right. So what I'm going to do is hang this off the edge. Can you see that? All right. I can hold it up here like this. And I'm going to take little baby glue bot and just get a nice little bead down inside the joint. Boop. Move on to the next one. See, this is why I love Baby Gluebot. Yeah, when you, I mean, it's not messy because it gets right, it fits right down in there. It's starting to get a little hard for me to hold it like that. Oh, so I was saying before, what you really, I mean, you want these joints to be really tight, but once it gets glued down to the plywood, this stuff is not moving. So you have to, you know, what you're doing here is really you want this stuff to hold together long enough to get it glued down to the plywood. But still, yeah, but like I said, you do want these joints to be really tight. So, oh, wired up. All right. Get my wax paper. Let me turn this around. All right. So you see it has this curl, and that's from all the tension that the tape was putting on it from the other side. But when we do the same thing from this side, it pulls it out flat and puts really good pressure on those joints. Now, I know someone asked about, they had some trouble gluing the veneer onto the drawer fronts. And veneer is always a little bit tricky because as soon as you start to get it wet, it wants to start to buckle up and potato chip up and all that kind of stuff. So you have to move fast, but it's important also to move deliberately and also not to be panicked, which I know that a lot of that comes from experience. So if the first time you do it, it can be a little nerve-wracking, but I'm not panicked right now. Whoops. So that's one thing, like in an actual, like an in-person class with me, you would notice that even when things go wrong, I don't panic. I get really angry and go outside and kick people's cars. No. Because everything can be fixed. Even if the remedy is to throw it in the fireplace, everything can be fixed.
Kirby said he got his Baby Gluebot at
Menards. Menards. I don't know how. Is he saying Menards? Maynards? Maynard G. Krebs started that. Do you know who Maynard G. Krebs is? You're not old enough.
Nope.
Maynard G. Krebs was actually Gilligan from Gilligan's Island.
I know who that is.
He was on a show called Dobie Gillis.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, he played the beatnik on Dobie Gillis. That when I came in from school as a kid, that's the kind of crap that was on TV.
I used to watch that shit.
Leave It to Beaver,
Yeah.
Gilligan's Island, Brady Bunch. That's the kind of stuff that was on. There was none of this TikToking, Instagramming.
It's Menards, not. But they still spelled it. Brad says he spelled it the same way, but they said not Maynards.
I'm calling it Maynards. Menards.
Just like an indicator.
Where'd you get your bobbers? At Maynards.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
We got a question for you. Matt, how many fish did you catch on Monday?
It's not been a good week for me. My power was out. I went fishing because I didn't have anything else to do, and I didn't catch any fish.
Joe caught 1 rainbow trout to Matt's none.
Nobody asked that question.
No, I did.
I'm still ahead in the count, though, by a ton. All right. So there it's glued together, and you can see it's pretty much flat now. You do want to make sure that all the pieces are flat with each other, and there's not, that they're not like this, that they're all flat.
Edgerson, take a private class from Matt, and you too can see how everything can be fixed.
Did you read that into the...
No, sure. It's up.
Edgar says, take a private class from Matt, and you too can see how everything can be fixed.
We had some fun today, didn't we, Edgar? All right. I have a little bit out of whack here. So I'm going to try to smash it down. Yeah, from the plywood. It's just coming from my dust bones. I'm hitting it so hard that I'm turning the wood into dust. And then my saw table's going to break off.
Edgar says he's less stressed about cutting those pins.
Okay, that's pretty good. All right, so that one goes into the oven. And I would let that dry for, what I would do is set it aside, and I would start making that and set it aside while I finish up the cabinet or whatever, and then it's good and dry. But you could come back to it. You could take that tape off, give it an hour or so, hour and a half, and it'll be fine. So here's one that I actually glued up not that long ago, like right at 5 o'clock tonight. And I'm just going to take the tape off. It works a little bit better if you pull it kind of like this. Oh, you son of a gun. Darling, I think we should do our gift registry at Maynard's. They've got some really nice buckets.
Baby glue bots.
And baby glue bots. There used to be one called Scotty's. That was a long time ago. That's when I was a kid. There was one called Scotty's in the South. Yeah, it was definitely before Home Depot and stuff. Well, Piggly Wiggly's still around. Yeah. Food Line. I don't know about Food Line, but there are definitely still Piggly Wigglies down south. You gotta get back up in the hollers. Yeah. Winn-Dixie. I think Winn-Dixie's still around. Publix is the best grocery store in the world.
All
right,
Chris
Sean
says Food Line is still alive and well. Jay Leslie says, is there any glue squeeze out?
Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of squeeze out for sure. And I'm going to actually show you what to do about that.
Of course, Kirby to the rescue. Piggly Wiggly is around the corner from me. It's where I do my grocery shopping. Shop the pig.
Kirby. It's good to know there's Piggly Wiggly in heaven, Mr. Puckett. Yeah, of course there's Piggly Wiggly. Piggly Wiggly. Pick and Save is no more. That hasn't been around for a long time. My dad loved Pick and Save. Oh my God. We gave him so much crap about liking Pick and Save. He would always joke, like, Izod had the alligator on their clothing, right? That little alligator.
I know what you're talking about.
And he would joke that all the clothing that was sold at Pick and Save had a little cockroach on it. That place was like when I was a kid, like my parents would want to go into Kmart and I would just feel weird about it, But going in the Pick and Save was like the absolute worst thing as a kid. All right. So what I'm going to do now is, Jim, I'm going to come over here.
Sure.
So maybe, do we need to take a break to move the camera?
Nah.
All right. So here's the one that I just took all the tape off of, and you can see that there's definitely glue squeeze out. Now, you don't have to get rid of all the squeeze out, all the little bit, because there's a ton of glue surface here, but you really should do as good a job as you can. And I'm just going to take a card scraper, just going to take an old-fashioned card scraper and do a good old-fashioned scrapering. And I really don't care. I don't really care about the surface because this is getting glued down. So if there's a little bit of tear out, it's not a big deal. No, this is the jointed side. We're going to glue the jointed side down to the plywood. Private lessons, lessons for money. If you also take a class with me, I sing that song all day long. Oh, this is how we do it.
Not sure if you're going to get to this, Matt, before we go to the next part, but Brad wants to know, does it matter much on how the veneer grain direction glues down to the plywood?
No.
Do you need to maintain
cross banding? So yeah,
for stability reasons.
When plywood is made, each layer is laid, not normally, when plywood is made, each layer is laid down 90 degrees to the one beneath it. So in theory, what you do is you would have the grain for this back running across the side, from side to side of the cabinet. So the shorter dimension rather than the longer dimension. But I don't think it matters for this. So you can have it all running in the same direction. And that's actually what I'm doing on this one. And of course, if you have like a drum sander, you could run this through the drum sander now. Again, yeah. but I don't, and I would assume most of you do not. So
You avoid the planer, thickness planer.
you should avoid. Yeah, Joe asked if we should avoid the thickness planer. You should avoid it at all costs now. Most thickness planers would absolutely eat this thing for lunch. However, once it's glued to the plywood, you then could send it through the thickness planer, and I often do that. Behave.
Chris wants to know, would it be more stable if we leave the blue tape on one side while card scraping the opposite?
Nah. Nah,
I think the problem is Matt's
my
stop
stop.
is facing the wrong way so that we can see it on camera. It actually faces the opposite direction.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit harder for me to do it. Because normally I'd be standing like this, and I would be really close to the edge. And this is just a little bit harder to do. That, and also the stop is a little chewed up, and this is really thin. All right. I think this is good enough. That's good enough. I know that, I'm gonna come back. So here's my plywood, and you can see that this is definitely too long. So I'm going to cut this down just a tiny little bit over length at the table saw, and then we'll glue it up. And look what time, it's 8:48. Good night, baby Gluebot. Let me get a lickety-clicker. Is the dust collection hooked up to the table saw? This will just take 2 seconds to do this. All right, go ahead. I guess we'll come back here. What you're about to witness is going to be kind of crazy in a way. But this is probably, of all the things that I'm showing you, can they still hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Of all the things I'm showing you, this one is probably, well, nothing I've shown you so far deviates from how I actually do it. This is something that does deviate from how I do it. And that's because the way I do it is with a vacuum press. And I am not going to tell you to go out and get a vacuum press. However, I will tell you this, that, all right, so when people ask me about tools, like what hand planes should I get or what chisels should I get, you know, if you ask me as someone that basically making furniture is in some fashion my way of living, either it's making furniture and selling it, it's teaching other people to do it, it's writing books and articles about it, it's what I do for a living. I know for a fact that it is worth the money to save up and buy yourself a Lee Nielsen or a Veritas or an H&T Gordon hand plane, as opposed to buying something like one of the new Stanley planes, which are junk. So I shouldn't say that, but they're not anywhere near as good. They're not. Save up and get a good Lee Nielsen, Veritas, H&T Gordon. It depends on how seriously you want to take this as a hobby. If you are really serious about it, get a vacuum press. I got one when for me it was still a hobby. I was working at Fine Woodworking, but it was just, you know, it was still a hobby. And I got one and I haven't regretted it. So I use it quite a bit. You can even make one and you run it off your compressor with a Venturi valve. That's what I have. I got it from, I think the website is joewoodworker.com. And he sells the kits to make one out of basically brass fittings, a specific type of PVC pipe, and a Venturi valve. And it works great. And that's what I use. I'm going to show you what you can do without a vacuum press, because I know most people don't have a vacuum press. All right. First I need okay. All right, so Joe has to switch batteries on the camera. So while he does that, oh. I've set some bench horses down on my table saw, and there is wax paper underneath to catch any glue spillage. Now, so the big thing is you have to get clamping pressure over this entire surface. And standard clamps, like my Jorgensen Cabinet Masters, which I'm going to be using, 2 of them will not reach the center. So you have to somehow get pressure into the center. And there's a couple of different ways you could do it. You could do it with cawls that have a slight bow in them. And that works really well. And you could do it with just 2 vertical, like 2 pieces of wood. And you could put like a little piece of, you could like an 1/8 inch thick piece of plywood underneath it. That's like 2 inches by 2 inches. And that serves the same purpose as that curved cawl. Or you could do something like what I'm about to show you. And I think this is going to work pretty awesome. But then again, it might not. I know it's going to. It'll work. So I made these kind of look like they're 2x4s that I jointed and planed. And so they're 4 square. I made them into little T's. This might be a little overkill, but it's definitely going to work. So that's going to go down. Then you want to keep the veneer flat as you do this. So, and also the thickness, this double thickness of plywood will spread the pressure out more evenly. So I've got 2 pieces of plywood down, all right? You could wax this to ensure that no glue sticks to it. So that's going to go down. Then we're going to put our piece of plywood in there, and the veneer is going to go onto it. It's going to be taped down. All right. And actually, I should put something in there. Maybe I'll grab a piece of that wax paper. So that's going to go. Oh, yeah, I brought the wax paper out. Then there's going to be 2 more pieces of plywood. At this point, it's cheaper. No, it's not. Then there's going to be 2 more calls like this. And so clamping pressure radiates out at 45 degrees. So what we're doing is putting a ton of clamping pressure down on this thing and sort of radiating it out from a higher angle. So it's going to overlap by the time it gets down to the plywood and the veneer. And I'm going to put this all like this, and then I'm going to take my big Jorgensen clamps and just clamp them, reach in as far as I can and tighten them down. All right. The other thing you could do, and this really would work if you could keep it everything aligned right, is you could tape up just the plywood and then drive your car up on top of it and let your car sit there. You really need a boatload of clamping pressure. What was so nice about a vacuum press, it takes all the air out of the bag. And so all of the pressure of the atmosphere is pressing down on top of the glue up in the bag. You get perfectly uniform pressure, but it's also a boatload of pressure. Okay, so let's do this. All right, take this off, take this off.
Do you use baby glue bot?
I'm not using baby glue bot for this. No, you want to get as much glue on there as fast as you can.
Why not clamp both veneers on at the same time?
It's too much to do at once, for one reason. 2, this veneer overhangs the plywood by a little bit. So after it dries, you're going to trim it down flush, then glue on the other one, trim it down flush, and then you can cut everything down to size, which is what we'll do next week. But it's just too much to do both at one time. So you just do one. It's not you can leave it in there for a couple of hours and take it out and do the other one. All right, let me. Okay. Are we ready to rumble? All my scrap is not in here anymore. Where? Oh, yeah. Well, that's good plywood. Oh, that's actually not. It's basswood. I'll use that. All right. So you want to make sure you get glue everywhere, especially out at the edges. But part of the reason this is oversized is in case you don't get good contact and adhesion out at the edge, which is a place that's often problematic. You end up cutting it away. So you already got glue on there. So you always put glue on the substrate, never on the veneer. What's that?
Some ASMR stuff. Right?
Oh. Yeah, I don't know what this ASMR business people are always talking about is. Joe said this is some ASMR business. I guess it's just something that's satisfying.
Yeah, it's like audio. It's a lady that used to smash bread against her face on YouTube.
Smash bread against her face. Joe said there was a lady that smashed bread against her face, and I guess he found that very pleasing. This is the point when I usually tell Joe to go home. All right, so that's a nice even coat of glue. It's all over the plywood out to the edges. There is some on that wax paper, and I'm just going to clean that off before I go any further. Before I go any further, the world was so bad when I was a kid that people actually watched Hee Haw. Get the family together, it's Hee Haw time. I've just offended somebody from the South. I am from the South, and I actually did watch Hee Haw when I was a kid. And it was terrible. What else could you do? There wasn't much else on. Sunday Night Disney, that was always good. Oh, tape. All right, Joe. Can you come over here and
Putting this so nobody sees you.
do me some tape? Do me some tape up.
Piece about what, like that?
Yeah.
I use your knife.
Oh, whatever.
Don't want to offend you.
The tape is here, one, to keep the veneer from curling up, but also to help keep it from moving under the clamping pressure.
How many do you need?
Give me 2 more. Because even K-body clamps have a little tendency to sort of twist things as they put clamping pressure down. A little bit, they're nowhere near as bad as F-style clamps at that.
That's it?
That's good, yeah. Okay. Now I've turned that upside down because if there is any squeeze out, the overhang of the veneer should catch it. If you have so much squeeze out that it's oozing out of the sides like ectoplasm in Ghostbusters, you put too much glue on. All right. I just got some glue from somewhere right there. Okay. What do you think people would do if I just said, now you do it like this, and then you just put some crystals on top? And some essential oils, and it'll be fine. The power of the essential oils will bind it.
You probably have more people.
Yeah, probably.
Than your people. Just a mole.
Yeah, it's just like, what is he doing? We watched him pair, and now he's gluing something up. And if your chakras are aligned, then this is going to work. If they're not, if they're in bad alignment, You are. Whoa!
Yeah, your chakras are falling apart.
Clearly, my chakras are not lined up. Okay.
Zoom into the squeeze out.
There's the squeeze out.
That's my Xbox name. Mr. Squeeze Out.
The squeeze out.
Mr. Squeeze.
Mr. Squeeze out?
Seriously, that's my Xbox name.
Is it really? Joe said that his Xbox name is Mr. Squeeze out. And again, you can see that I'm not rushing. I'm not freaking out. Yellow glue has an open time of, some amount. I think it's like 10 minutes or something, or more, maybe 15. If you're worried about that, you could use Tight Bond 3. That even has an even longer open time. Unibond makes Unibond 1, which has an even longer open time. I'm not tightening these down all the way yet. I'm just getting them clamped on. Okay, now that they're all clamped on, I'm going to start to tighten them down. This is also, if you're a parent with a child in elementary school, this is also how they make flat Stanley. Boy, I tell you what, this just got some clamping brush, and look at how it's getting all that glue out there. All right. Yeah, it's not quite. Come on. Man. I think we're good. I think it's good.
Looks good.
It looks amazing, right? I don't know if it works, but it looks like it does. This will definitely work. The reason I didn't go with, say, like a caul that has a little bump in the middle or something underneath it is I don't think this is wide enough that for it to really be able to, because the idea is that, so if the caul is curved like this, and the high spot goes in the middle, and you have a high spot on top, and then when you clamp down from the outside, in the first place it starts to put pressure is where it's touching the caul, or the veneer, so to speak. So in the middle, and as you pull them down close to each other, and they end up touching on the outside as well, then that's just like an insane amount of pressure radiating out from the middle to the edges. And then you know that the middle has good pressure on it. But I don't think this is wide enough for me to actually bend a vertical, like, because the caul has to be sort of vertical like this. It would not have the horizontal part of these. It would only be the vertical part. And then I just don't think I could have bent them, so to speak, to apply all that pressure.
Mike wants to know, have you used or recommended the skateboard vacuum bags?
I've not used it, but I know someone that does use it a lot, and he really likes it. I think they call it's the Roar Rocket, something like that. It started out as like a little hand pump thing, and I guess if you could get one that's big enough for this, it would work. I'm confident that it would work. Yeah, and those are affordable. Those are, but I think they're hand pumped. But I'm not sure the price of those. But yeah, that would definitely work. Yeah. All right. Well, you would leave this in the clamps for about 2 hours or so. Take it out. Cut it down flush to the edge of the plywood. Do the other side. Leave it in for 2 hours. Cut it down flush. And then next week we'll talk about fitting it, and we'll talk about finishing the cabinet, applying finish and all that. All right. Any questions?
Not that I see.
Everyone else is just like, I'm tired. Let me go.
Everybody's tired of watching Matt pare wood and clamp things. Any questions, anybody? Too bad we're not going to answer them. Have a good
Joseph,
night.
that's not acceptable.
Nothing yet.
Nothing. Is anybody snoring?
The best part was watching him sand wood.
That's true. I sanded wood, I pared wood, and I clamped wood and spread glue.
It's a good day.
Wasn't the most exciting of episodes, but it was an important one. So you got to do it all to get it done. You got to do every little bit of it, even the boring stuff. I don't find it boring, though.
All right.
That's it?
That's it.
All right. Well, we have one more class to go. That will be on Monday of next week. Monday of next week. If you can't make it live, it'll be up for on-demand viewing on Tuesday, usually in the morning. And then we're done. But I'll still answer questions about the class. Oh, hashtag. Yeah, if you're making this and showing it on your Instagrams, do hashtag. I don't know. What's the hashtag you came up with?
I think it was Endgrain wall cabinet, Endgrain cabinet, MEK Endgrain cabinet.
I don't know.
Matt will put something out on his Instagram tomorrow.
Like I'll remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll see you next Monday. If you have questions in between, make sure to post them to the community, and I'll answer them. Otherwise, have a good evening or good morning if you're on the other side of the world. And I'll see you next week.